This video will serve as a critical analysis of JJK. Fearful of Shueisha and JJK's copyright, this will also be complemented by just Bad Wars material, but I will try my best to have different edits to showcase exactly what I mean during the analysis, but thank you for your time. Jujutsu Kaisen is a series I first watched in October of 2020. After seeing clips of Gojo and looking for new anime to watch, I stumbled upon JJK, in which I was immediately floored with how uninterested I was. I never thought JJK was a bad anime or manga until most recently. I have the most love-hate relationship with this series more than anything or anyone I have ever met. I have dropped it, I picked it back up, I slandered it, I dropped it, I loved it, and now I think it is terrible. I have talked about JJK with countless people, and while it's very fun to talk about, the series has lost all value to me. JJK's popularity is beyond insane. People that do not watch anime are still aware of JJK somehow. Memes and internet jokes like "Stand proud, you are strong," or "Are you blank because of blank," or the worst one, "Nah, I'd win," are the most recognizable of what I'm talking about. JJK's popularity is far beyond anything normal for a weekly manga. Even One Piece does not have motion like I've seen JJK have. Having a McDonald's cosign, JJK is easily the anime and manga with the most motion I have seen. Why is that, however? This analysis will explore the derivative and robotic roots for how a piece of media can control the masses so profusely. JJK has a small cast of characters. Well, the cast is decently large, but calling them characters would be insulting. There are only 3 good characters in this series. Gojo, Sukuna, and Toji are the only characters I consider to be somewhat noteworthy. This means Nanami, Yuji, Maki, Yuta, Hikari, Mahito, and especially Kenjaku are not good characters, at least in my eyes. My criteria for character writing isn't some esoteric, elitist, high artistic masterpiece mumbo jumbo. We all know what good character writing is. Walter White, Eren before chapter 139, Zuko, Johnny Joestar, all amazing characters. Honestly, I think Gojo in a good series like Bleach or Hunter x Hunter would be literally amazing, but he's restricted because of JJK. In short, the problem with JJK characters is that they're all flat, uninteresting, or backdoored by the plot. Yuji, the main character, is insanely uninteresting, with one arc spanning the entire series with very minimal development. Neglecting your role in society and becoming a cog just to save lives, yeah bro, we get it. It is simply not engaging enough, and being sidelined constantly by far more interesting characters like Maki or Kashimo doesn't help your case. Yorzu, Yuki, Higuruma, all characters that are boring with nothing to offer outside a pedantic framework if you want to dive into. The Disaster Curses are an antagonist group that absolutely pale in comparison to contemporaries like the Order. Nobara is a character that stands to oppose gender roles and live her life freely, but get absolutely hoed by the plot. Megami, the deuteragonist of the manga, has his entire character put on an indefinite TBD, basically putting him in character writing limbo. Mahito is an interesting character that subscribes to Sukuna's ideals and has an interesting philosophical belief. Kenjaku is an abomination of a character that completely removes any reader investment or engagement. Naoya was an antagonist absolutely shredding Maki until she got blessed up by Akutami and saved by 2 randoms never to be seen again, aka plot armor. How could the development and arc of a character be satisfying and fulfilling if it is 100% contingent on plot armor and contrivances? This is just like in AOT when Grisha wanted Zeke to stop Eren, but we never knew why he gave Eren the founder in the first place. Debasing character motivations and roles to garbage plot subsequently makes the character garbage as well. Themes and emotion should not be a substitute for logic in satisfying threads of plot. A lot of characters in JJK aren't real characters, meaning they have zero depth and minimal characterization. People like characters like Choso, Todo, Jogo, and Yorzu, but it's typically for insanely shallow reasons. Choso is a mediocre character with an arc around atoning for his sins, which is done in the most uninspiring way ever. Todo has no real character outside of being smart and I guess reliable. Yorzu is deeply flawed, creating a plot hole in the series and one of the most jarring reads in Shonen Jump. The fact is, JJK has a terrible cast of characters, especially compared to Chainsaw Man, Haikyuu, and Naruto. Even people that make hour-long analysis videos fully admit that the JJK side cast is terrible. The argument of, hey, this guy agrees with me, is typically garbage and fallacious, but the argument still stands as it's commonly known throughout the community. Characters are simply being wasted and written in the most unsatisfactory ways possible. Let me start off by saying this plot is nothing but terrible. Every single series has levels of plot armor, but this series goes out of its way to contrive situations in which people die or people miraculously survive. Todo doesn't kill Yuji out of fake autism memories implanted in his brain? What? Hanami survives a hollow purple? That doesn't even make any damn sense, bro. There are a ton of examples like Higuruma not even supposed to be in the Shinjuku Showdown. The main agency for culling games was the unsealing of Gojo and the removal of Sumiki. To do this, we need 100 points and to find the player named Angel. The 100 points were obtained in pretty good ways that resulted in either a good fight or interesting character work. Sometimes both. The player Angel, however, she just miraculously found our main character, no search, no conflict, no struggle, just here you go, here's the plot device so Daddy Gojo can come back. It's funny as well because Sukuna has the opportunity to straight kill her ass, but the plot needs her, so no. Sukuna can use his damn domain on a finger bearer, he can use his most powerful technique on someone who worships him, he can one-shot literally someone with the best durability in the series, but he can't kill this woman? Why do you think so? It's because of the plot. It's contrived and I see the strings akutami. There is a reason why Sukuna is regarded as convenience man. Sukuna is sealed inside of Yuji, so how does he get out? He commits acts of violence completely dependent on the arrival of one of the worst characters in the series. The same character that gives Sukuna a free get out of jail free card simply for existing. Naturally, he gets away scot-free because of porn acting, characters not using abilities, and Akutami having an infatuation for bad writing. Even on a smaller scale, Akutami simply is not good at plot development. Maki in culling games is absolutely outclassed by Naoya, so Akutami shamelessly introduces characters in order to give her the win. Maki goes inside a literal time chamber, to power up. Unlike Dragon Ball, JJK pretends to have complex theming and nuance. Kyoto Goodwill had a plot about killing Yuji. Nah, psych. It was dropped. The villains come through and are basically used as training punching bags until they survive nuclear attacks and steal arbitrary things that have minimal significance. Even the subplot with the traitor in Jujutsu High is completely garbage. Let's review how it is described. There is a mole within the school feeding information to a higher up that is feeding information to the bad guys. Okay, a pretty A to B to C type of plot. Cool. Kenjaku, who is 1,000 years old with knowledge on barrier techniques, the Six Eyes, Tengen and Sukuna's past, with all of Geto's memories, needs information from a 16-year-old? Excuse me? Do we know how they met? Nah. What about what specific information was given? Nah. So we have to suspend our disbelief that the smartest character in the series with memories of someone who went to jujutsu school needs information from a 16-year-old. What about the higher up who was supposedly getting information from Mechamaru to give to Kenny? Why does Kenny and Mahito make a binding vow with Mechamaru and not the higher up? It doesn't seem like the higher up even exists. But if that's true, what the hell is the point in mentioning that is the most likely the case? The entire plot point is nothing short of stupid and contrived, especially concerning the plot hole we reach when Mechamaru and Mahito fight. Saving all plot holes for its own section, let's discuss more on Mahito and his performance in Shibuya. First off, Shibuya is such a narrative mess. It is supposed to be a big climactic battle, but reads as if the author is throwing up on the page. The evidence for such a claim is how the antagonists are handled, but primarily Mahito. When the disaster cursors are getting dismantled by the strongest people to ever exist, seemingly arbitrarily, it turns the structure of this arc into a fanfic in which it would be so cool if Sukuna killed him and Tokyo had that dog in him. Mahito in Shibuya suggests that they all play a game with Itadori, and whoever finds him first gets to do whatever he wants with him. Very cool. Seems like Mahito. At 9:27, they all agree to this game. At 9:30, Mahito splits himself into two people. At 11:16, Mahito finds Nobara and kills her shortly. Pay attention to the timeline. Mahito was essentially doing nothing for basically 2 hours, despite having 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 techniques. This is what makes him just luckily and matter-of-factly stumbling upon the most important people to Itadori so egregious, because he objectively didn't earn anything. The writer just pulled some strings and voila. It is passable when Kenjaku does nothing for 2 hours, because I suppose he's monitoring the prison realm. Not really, but is waiting to backdoor Jogo and Mahito. Speaking of backdooring Mahito, the writing decision to take away the satisfaction of Yuji killing Mahito, you know, the man who killed off main characters, instead turning him into a plot device, is one I hate down to my core. It reminds me of when Oda told us the cake was gonna stop Big Mom, and it was the one thing we need to stop her, but the cake does literally nothing and she walks it off. It reminds me of part 5, where every fight is a life or death, to the point where Narancia kills 2 zesty ass dudes in broad daylight. However, the nastiest dudes to ever exist, Chocolata and Sessio, gets dumped into a trash can only to be confirmed dead in a data book. Basically, it feels like you're robbing and stealing from the audience. Even in the current stages of the manga, when characters have had a month to deliberate and plan, but something so simple like Sukuna using a substitution jutsu so his cursed techniques get swapped with Kamutoke creates nothing but frustration with the readers. How the hell can grown adults not think, hey, my law-abiding cursed technique might not take away his cursed technique, but the cursed tool instead of his cursed technique? Lol. This is more of a nitpick because it got explained and sort of makes sense, kind of, but in Hidden Inventory, when the maid or whatever got kidnapped and then the very next panel they're all fine and just chilling at the beach, it creates an extremely jarring read. Like, why the hell did that even need to happen? You're just wasting time. Weak sorcerers do not have a sense of self. The crux of JJK's themes is personal autonomy and agency, a person working in their own interests, caring for themselves only. reinforced with Gojo telling Megumi it is okay to be selfish, Uro telling Yuta that everyone hits their limit if they don't have an overwhelming sense of self, and Gojo and Kashimo disregarding their place as the strongest to bond in the need to have other people fulfill them. A more layered thematic framework consists of traditionalism versus modernism, cyclicality, and the autonomous occult of cursed energy. The story seems to punish people who deviate from their true selves while rewarding those who don't. The only thing I really like about JJK is its theming. I find it decently interesting because of how unique it is, minus cyclicality. The problems I have with the theming in JJK result in the pretentiousness of them occasionally. JJK tries to tell you that there is nuance between curses and humans and that they're not different sides of the same coins, yada yada, whatever. The story constantly says that they're not heroes fighting for justice, they're just jujutsu sorcerers. But this just isn't true. Sorcerers are consistently the objective good force in the world for the entire series, with Yuta saving kids, Yuji's worrisome disposition in Shibuya, Nanami abandoning the work life in order to fight against literal evil, and Maki dismantling the sexist, ableist, abusive society of the Zannin family, protecting the weak, striving for universal freedom. These are ontologically good things that the writer isn't going to just change by saying, hey, they're nuanced, hey, they're not heroes for justice. My second issue is with the cyclicality theme of the series. To keep it short and blunt, it is horribly executed. Curses spawning from humans in which humans become curses. We have only seen this once within Naoya, and it's basically a non-factor past Shibuya. There's some fake world building funding the cyclical idea of JJK, in which an example lies in Yuta. The story starts in Sendai, established by the Fujiwara. In the Sendai colony, Uro places emphasis on Yuta's Fujiwara descent, in which she is beaten very similarly to how the Fujiwara originally took over Sendai, aka cyclicality. The idea of Fujiwara continuously taking over is cyclical, but who the hell cares? Who the hell is Uro? Who the hell is the Fujiwara clan? Why should any of this matter to the audience when this is all new and vapid? It is so expertly not communicated that many readers will never acknowledge this even on a second viewing. This is 100% because of the terrible world building. My definition and criteria for examining world building is decently awkward. I think a series like Adventure Time has good world building, while One Piece doesn't have as good world building as Bleach. In my eyes, a strong set of rules, characters interacting with the setting, or large set pieces for dramatic and thematic influence usually constitute good world building. Jujutsu Kaisen, however, has insanely terrible world building. Firstly, the revival of the Heian era, coined by Kenjaku, is refurbished with the fan base, and is completely made up. How many Heian era sorcerers do we meet? What are they like? What's their ideals? How do they know Kenjaku? The story simply says, go fuck yourself. We meet Yorozu, Uro, Angel, and maybe Daido if you want to take some influence from there, it doesn't matter. We meet those boys from the Heian era, but everyone else are either modern sorcerers, sorcerers from periods older than the Heian era, or sorcerers from periods earlier than the Heian era. How do you as a writer say we are going to see X, but completely fail to do the bare minimum? This is just like Oda and Wano constantly saying pirates will betray each other, just for 150 chapters later, nothing of the sort even comes close to happening. Once again, it is just lying to the audience, but much worse, pump faking world building. I've actually noticed something, this is off script actually, I've actually noticed something, how every single sorcerer we spend time with, a lick of time with, right? Like Angel, like Yorozu, because you know we actually have to. They're somewhere connected towards Sukuna. Even Kashimo. So it's like Sukuna is the only reason why these dudes exist. That's perfectly fine, but why don't you flesh out why? Why don't you flesh out, hey, Sukuna is this guy, or hey, we are this guy, and we want this to do with Sukuna? It's all just so vapid. What if we got a sorcerer that stood in convention to Sukuna's ideals, and when killed by him, or Urame or whoever, he grew bitter and swore vengeance? What if we got a sorcerer who was more invested with improving his jujutsu, looking at techniques like Yuta and Gojo's, and growing envious but innovative? We have so many sorcerers that came from distant places in time that we don't know, that is evidently garbage and creatively bankrupt. This also extends to the sun and moon tribes of assassins that we hear about but never see. Some JJK readers will be like, what the fuck is that? But I guarantee you, they bring this shit up like a million times, it just doesn't damn matter. We hear that Sukuna defeated all of them, including Angel, but why don't we see it? Why tell us, hey, these people are strong and notable, but not show us with their past? But what about the Jujutsu families? First off, the Gojo clan is not real. It's just a plot device to have Gojo live this life of solitude. The Gojo clan is not real. We don't know a single damn person outside of Gojo inside the Gojo clan. That is egregious on creative writing. The Kamo clan is a non-factor in the story because there is no Maharaga or limitless technique. And the Zenin family, while being the best, is not important to the story at all. It shapes Toji and Maki's character, but you can effectively replace the Zenin clan with a traumatic moment in their past to yield the same results. Why introduce these places, these concepts, if they don't matter? The families matter so little that Maki straight up executed them boys, and nobody gave a fuck. Which has its own implications, because what if some members like Ranta were actually really nice guys with family and children, and they were just cool, but no one cares, right? The Zenin family military is made up of two units, the Hei and the Kukuru. Does anyone give a fuck? Did Maki low diff them all the same way? There is no way you critically examine the ideas at play in this manga and come to the conclusion of good world building. You especially cannot come to this conclusion when you examine the power system. Power systems are world building. This should not be a new concept to most, but I feel the need to say it anyway. And let me tell you, cursed energy is terrible. Outside of being derivative, cursed energy showcases how limited and trite Akutami's writing really is. Cursed techniques, we'll call CTs from now on, are basically your Shikai, while your domain expansion is your Bankai, if you're strong enough to have such a thing. Unlike Shikai and Bankai, which serve to characterize the wielder and promote subtextual writing, CTs and domain rarely do such a thing and are often given out arbitrarily. How does the 10 Shadows characterize Megami? How does Star Rage characterize Yuki? How does Sky Manipulation characterize Uro? These things are just randomly dished out, which can be fine, like who needs to know how Hinako characterizes Rangiku, right? But subscribing to that belief concedes that A, these characters aren't important enough to be characterized like that and therefore waste your time, or B, the author just gives people's abilities to just do cool things as a priority. Gin Shikai showcases his untrustworthy, mysterious nature. Shunsui Shikai tells the audience his relaxed, free spirit appearing with his responsibility. Kisuke Shikai shows us how resourceful and methodical he is. In JJK, you do have exceptions like Sukuna, Gojo, Toji, somehow, and Higuruma, but exceptions do not make the rule. I said all this to hammer home that the power system doesn't have any deep character significant richness to supplement any problems it has. Bleach power system is essentially Dragon Ball, if I have more spirit energy than you, I win GG. But at least it characterizes everyone in an interesting way. I also think Bleach comparisons are more than fine because Akutami has admitted to being a fan as well as inspired by Kubo. Let's begin. First, how does one learn domain expansion? We know that if you externalize your Zanpakuto toe spirit, then force them into submission, aka accept yourself, you can achieve Bankai. So how the fuck can Megumi just whip out a domain expansion because he wants to? How does Naoya learn a domain while being a cursed spirit? Did he already have a domain? We know domains are one-to-one with barriers. How does him being a cursed spirit amplify his knowledge on barriers? Does he get a domain simply from switching sides? Did he already have a domain? Ryu's curse technique is cursed energy output, which by itself is pretty stupid considering the narrator says it's a non sequitur in battle. With such an odd curse technique, how does he imbue it into a barrier for a sure hit? Not everything has to be so logical, but I understand imbuing a cleave or a water shikigami, or even forcing someone to use your CT inside your domain. How does a CT, which is described as a non sequitur, get imbued into a lethal domain? The overall point is that the loose domain mechanics in which just happen for the plot with very little reason or logic. If they were logical, we would understand how domains can be unlocked and how people like Ryu can have a lethal domain. How does one learn domain implication? Again, we get a play-by-play explanation on how Kido spells are generally used, but in JJK, people can just do things by looking at it once? How? How can Higuruma do domain amp after seeing Sukuna do it once? I understand Mahito doing the 0.2 second domain because it was primarily a gamble, but Higuruma picked it up just by seeing it. Domain amp by itself is heavily underutilized, having a statement of being able to erect a sure hit without an actual barrier. Why do we not see a single person in the story use this? Could you imagine Megumi having this technique? One of the smartest people in the series, he uses domain amp to make sure Nue lands his lightning. Let's talk about binding vows. Being completely synonymous with nen contracts, binding vows are essentially plot loopholes for Akutami to allow people to do whatever they want. Unlike nen contracts that were used for the most dramatic and negative reasons, binding vows are only used for bullshit. Hikari uses a binding vow to sacrifice his arm to save his body? Nice. Sorcerers can reveal their CT to release a binding vow in which they strengthen their technique? That's cool. How exactly does that strengthen the technique is never explained. Meaning it is essentially a plot necessary tool for the audience to know what's happening while keeping the logic of the series intact. Sukuna uses multiple binding vows to save his skin, which is generally fine but starts to feel extremely staggering after the 1,000,000th time. We learn that in order to use the world slash free of charge, he taxed every other usage afterwards to kill Gojo. We don't even know what the effects of a broken binding vow is. Kenjaku said that sometimes you lose what you gained, but what about Miwa, who swore to never wield a sword again? If she picks up a sword, will she just blow up like an Adventure Time character? Or can she literally never hold a sword, like neurologically just forgot how to? Your guess is just as good as mine. Do you see the consistency of binding vows? Instead of doing anything close to his character establishing as what Gon, Kurapika, or even Chrollo did, Akutami just uses it so characters can do whatever they want. Hisoka did something very similar to this in his fight with Chrollo, but it was never as egregious as what Akutami has done here. Apparently, sorcerers can make contracts to sacrifice their lives to power themselves up. Mei's birds in Yuta in Volume 0 sacrifice themselves to go beyond the limit of cursed energy. You're telling me sorcerers can essentially start crashing out on Sukuna to save the day right now. You're telling me that sorcerers can start crashing out on whoever whenever they come close to losing. Me personally, if I was Jogo, or Yorizu, or Reggie, or whoever the hell, I would just make a binding vow to give up my life to get all the strength possible. But hey, that sounds like Hunter x Hunter. Weren't you just praising that? But it's literally the same thing. Wrong. Nen contracts only work with intense emotions, aka Kurapika and Gon, who have strong feelings of self-worth and ambition. Not just anyone can do it. But if birds can do it, why can't Jogo do it? The point of what I'm saying is, how can a power system be so corrupt to the point characters can essentially get god powers anytime they want, but just choose not to because the writer didn't give them permission? This reminds me of when Eren was saying that Armin only likes Annie because of Bertolt's memory and will inside him, but Armin, the same guy who advocates for peace and diplomacy, doesn't retort with, "What about you, Eren? Aren't you motivated by the Attack Titan as well?" Basically, an easy argument a 5th grader can make, but Armin didn't because the writer didn't give him permission. All world building issues in JJK can result in a DLC that Akutami has not yet unlocked, or just neglect to 100% the game, instead opting to just speed run. This section is probably going to be the weirdest one to me. JJK as a battle shonen is interesting as it is all it has, but it's not very good. To illustrate my favorite fights in manga, I always prefer fights with depth behind them, properly established mechanics and a good back and forth, or just a satisfying end. JJK doesn't have a single fight like this. Even the best fight in the series with Gojo vs Sukuna randomly introduces mechanics as well as an ending being off-screened. Gojo gets brain damage from healing out a burnt CT. Since fucking when? Let me tell you straight, not a single JJK fight is better than Luffy vs Lucci, Ichigo vs Kenpachi, Sasuke vs Deidara, Gon vs Hisoka, or even Bruno vs Peshudo and Pesci. All these fights either have heavy depth, an engaging back and forth, or a climactic and gratifying conclusion. Some fights even have all of this, like Luffy vs Lucci. Every fight in the Goodwill event is a joke with characters being severely outclassed. Yuji and Todo vs Hanami would be good if Hanami wasn't used as a punching bag for Yuji to learn Black Flash. Gojo vs Toji, both rounds, aren't even fights if we're being honest. Toji one-shots Gojo, then Gojo comes back and one-shots Toji. There's nothing at all engaging about that, even if they're both good characters. Some people's bias toward the anime may make what I'm about to say sound a bit crazier than what it is, but Shibuya does not have a single good fight. Well, outside of Yuji vs Choso, which is genuinely good, you know, ignoring the whole Mekumaru being dead thing, but still giving Yuji the play-by-play on how to win, without it ever being explained how he's playing that off, outside that egregious nonsense, whatever. That's fine. Sukuna vs Jogo and Maharaga are not fights. The anime will probably convince you that it's a spectacle and it's really cool, but they are not fights. And even if they are, who the hell likes a fight in which one character just dominates and destroys the other? Where's the tension there? The same thing for the Dagon fight, which is just Big Daddy Toji saving the day, in which the heroes face zero ramifications. I have already discussed at length why Mahito in Shibuya is insanely flawed, but there is another reason why this fight is bad that I'll discuss in another section. Gojo versus the disaster curses in the train station is pretty good if I'm being honest. Culling games is when JJK turns into all fights with zero substance, which is exacerbated with the fights not even being good. Yuji versus Higuruma isn't a fight because Higuruma just gives up midway through. Megumi vs Reggie is decently cool, but ends with Renji getting snuck by divine dogs, which yields an unsatisfying ending. The Yuta Sendai stuff is pretty good minus the pump fake airball with the triple domain being broken because of contrivance, which is the only reason why Earl is defeated there. Hikari vs Kashimo is one of the most engaging fights in the series, especially coming after a chapter with a zesty mangaka and a corny damn zoo animal. Writing off all the build-up of Hikari's strength, his performance is pretty good against Kashimo, or at least good enough. My own personal nitpick is that seeing Hikari get lucky and cheese out of situations because of luck or coincidence isn't really my cup of tea. Having a superior combatant get holed out because of several coincidences leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Maki vs Naoya is one of the worst fights in the series, with zero back and forth. It is the antagonist dominating everyone in the room. The hero goes inside a time chamber, powers up, defeats the main antagonist in literally one hit, and nothing special happens at all. It is an abomination of a fight. Kenjaku vs Yuki and Choso would be one of the best fights in the series if Yuki wasn't used as cannon jobber, all for Kenjaku to be dispatched in one shot. You can look at this fight in a vacuum if you want. I think, you probably should to save yourself the embarrassment. But stories don't exist in vacuums. You can't look at Attack on Titan, the fucking Trost arc, in a vacuum. The Trost arc sets up every arc after it. Kenjaku and Yuki's ideological conflict goes absolutely nowhere, despite being one of the most fascinating things to engage with in the story up to this point. Choso's character isn't at all a high point from this fight, as he does nothing for 50 chapters after this, and he's supposed to be redeemed for killing people by protecting Yuji? Is Eren supposed to be redeemed because he protected Eldia? Absolutely not. I already spoke about Yuji and Maki fighting Sukuna. It is super convenient that Maki didn't use soul liberation on a Sukuna whose output is draining rapidly. I wonder what would have happened. The Yorizu fight is one of the worst fights in the series, with Sukuna playing around per usual, so it's not engaging. It's extremely jarring with the brother and sister talking about romance and marriage concerning a dead body. The current Sukuna cycle many illiterate fans have coined is not as bad as what people think. Specifically, Yuta and Yuji fighting Sukuna is a highlight of the entire series. However, it is clear to see that Akutami is just spitballing with every page of the manga after Gojo vs Sukuna. Maki is MIA for 10 full chapters, despite this clearly being the most climactic section of the series. Hikari vs Orome has not been heard from since chapter 245. Akutami deciding to delegate main characters to the peanut gallery when fans are nothing but itching to see them perform is a juvenile and spiteful thing to do. Every long-run series has plot holes. Unless you're clearly exceptional at your craft, like Bleach or Usogi, plot holes are a part of the job, I like to think. Not every series has to be perfect, but when your series is flawed by itself, ignoring any plot holes, when you include them later on, you turn a mediocre series into a bad one. In this section, I will go over all the plot holes I have noticed and explain why they are plot holes. First, let's explore what a plot hole is. To me, there are two forms of plot holes, and not every plot hole has to be story breaking. Some can be like Itachi's age in Naruto, how it's very inconsistent. The first plot hole is the conventional type of plot hole in which information is contradicted. An example of this comes in One Piece. Wow, I wonder if anyone knew that. Wow. The example has to do with Madame Shirley in One Piece. In Fishman Island, she explicitly says that her future telling ability has nothing to do about when it happens, and she cannot see any time frame for her fortunes. I can only see what happens. The plot hole comes in chapter 967 in One Piece, where Roger asks Shirley when will the Princess Shirahoshi be born, and Shirley responds in 10 years. The second type of plot hole is the lack of a bridge to connect information A to event B. I already mentioned this, but a good example is Grisha giving the Attack Titan to Eren. Grisha, who clearly does not want Eren to rumble the world, still gives him the Titan, in which it was implied it was because Eren was manipulating his memories and forcing him to see something that would change his mind. Do we ever learn what that was? Hell nah. It debases character motivations to where they're mindlessly doing tasks like drones for the plot. Now that we know what makes a plot hole, let's play the Yoruzu review. While slightly stretching my definition of a plot hole, Yoruzu conveniently reincarnating into Megami's sister but pretending to be Sumiki by sitting in a wheelchair for a month just to have the first person she fights be Sukuna for completely arbitrary reasons feels so unnecessarily contrived, and this is the only reason Sukuna is able to take over Megami's body, and is without a doubt a plot hole in my mind. Higuruma joining the Alliance. The very last time we see Higuruma is in chapter 167, in which he denies helping Yuji because it makes him feel extra guilty for becoming such a terrible person. In chapter 222, we see Higuruma with the gang all cheering for Gojo after his departure. What the fuck? What happened to explicitly not wanting to help? The character's goals and motivations changing off screen and we're supposed to acclimate to them? Not at all. Mahito not healing his soul. In chapter 252, we learn that it's impossible to heal the soul from Sukuna. However, how the hell did Mahito ever lose under this rule? The only caveat to healing your soul was the awareness of your soul, in which Mahito is. We know cursed spirits heal a lot easier than sorcerers do, so every single hit Mahito ate from Yuji should have gotten healed to some extent. With this logic, it is impossible for me to envision Mahito losing. When Todo isn't doing any damage, he's healing from Yuji's punches, especially because he just hit 2 black flashes and we know what black flashes do to your output, and he himself said his soul is on a higher percentage than Yuji. Mahito CT not getting burnt out. In chapter 31, Mahito uses his CT to escape immediately after Sukuna disabled his domain. In chapter 82, directly after Mahito dispels his own domain, he uses his curse technique to kill Mekumaru. 2 different instances of the rule just not applying to Mahito for whatever damn reason. Under this logic, Uro should have never lost, Yuki and Tengen's plan is made to look retarded, and Gojo should have never lost his domain and thereby the fight. Todo not damaging the soul. Todo in chapter 37 tells Yuji and the audience that we exist in mind, body, and soul, and that we need to understand that to let cursed energy flow correctly. Todo himself calls himself Todo. Todo himself calls himself Todo. I'm pronouncing that wrong. he calls himself Todo in his own head because he takes these beliefs to heart. We also learn that Todo was basically groomed by Yuki, who wrote an entire book on the soul, which was pivotal for freeing Megami in chapter 251. There is a preponderance of evidence which suggests one outcome, but that outcome never manifests. Is it because if Todo and Yuji were both black flashing Mahito, then his ass would have gotten low diffed? Possibly. What I know for certain though, is that denying logical conclusions for plot reasons detangle any web of plot you wanted to create. You are dismantling your own plot in order to create a sensible stream of plot. How ironic. Mekumaru damaging Mahito. We learned in the Mekumaru fight that he was using simple domain in order to damage Mahito. In the Megami Reggie fight, we actually learned that simple domain cannot cancel out any CT. We have a character fighting by canceling out a CT, only to have a statement that it should have never happened. Is anyone else noticing how Mr. Akutami operates? Sukuna and Yuji's binding vow. We are all fully aware of chapter 212 with Sukuna taking over Megumi's body. The context to this working is completely asinine. Sukuna made a vow not to hurt or kill anyone for 1 minute. That's fair, that's fart. Wow. That's fair, that's smart. Why does he immediately knock out Hana to say, uh-oh, I can't drop her because that will break the binding vow? Nigga, what? So you can knock the bitch out, but you can't drop her on the ground because you knocked her out because that will break the binding vow? Excuse me? What's even worse is Sukuna force-feeding Megumi literal poison. Sukuna's fingers are described to be a toxic, lethal poison because he's literally the king of curses. What's even worse is the fact that Yuji wasn't talking about himself when he made the binding vow. The only reason he had to make the binding vow was because Sukuna ripped out his heart and took his body hostage. Gojo not knowing about Sukuna's domain. Low-hanging fruit, maybe, non-issue, maybe, but the fact that Kenjaku told Sukuna about Yuta's CT, but Choso didn't tell Gojo about Kenjaku's open domain, and Sukuna could have also had one based off Inomaki and Yuji's report, showcases incompetence within our main cast in which the fight could have gone an entirely different way if they used that 30 days to actually talk to each other. Sukuna's finger being indestructible. Before I even explain, does that even make any fucking sense? Do we think Sukuna's finger is indestructible in 2024? So when we go back to like chapter 2, when Gojo can't destroy the finger, what the fuck? No, that's not even true, bruh. We saw Soul Liberation Blade, which is able to. This is off script, bro. Fuck the script, bro. We saw Soul Liberation Blade, which is able to cut all inanimate objects. So that would include a Sukuna finger, unless Sukuna is just Himi times 10. We know Jacob's Ladder is still a thing, right? Or not still a thing. We know Jacob's Ladder is a thing. Can Jacob's Ladder just reduce the finger to a fucking regular finger or reduce that shit to yogurt? We don't know. I mean, we don't know. We know Black Rope exists. Black Rope could have opened the fucking prison realm. What can have done to the finger? We know Inverted Spear of Heaven exists, which is essentially just no cursed energy. So what could have happened to like the finger? And think about Gojo Satoru can't break the finger or can't destroy that mug. Nigga, if he would have done a 200% hollow purple, say on God that shit would have got destroyed. We get every single finger possible. We get all 20 fingers because it's just in Japan and Gojo can teleport. Gojo teleports around all 20 fingers. Line them all up. Arame starts twerking and shit. A fucking old dude starts playing the guitar and everything. And 200% hollow purple. Say on God they not gone. Say on God they not gone. It doesn't matter. It's a plot hole. It's so insane to me that these niggas are gonna say it's indestructible after the shit we've seen. Of course, it might be like a minor issue to some people because, yes, an idea present in chapter 2 not holding up in chapter 200. That's not like an uncommon thing in a manga, but I mean, people love to praise fucking Gege for his long-term storytelling, and he foreshadowed Megumi and Sukuna body, and you're in volume 0, very important to cyclicality. That's some bullshit, bro. We know in chapter 2 he can fuck up on regular things that aren't true. Because no one in their right mind thinks that, because Gojo's justification for it is that the curse is too powerful, or a powerful curse, ain't it? Ain't it? And it's so retarded. Like, no one is ever going to think that a 200% hollow purple who is able to damage a full power Sukuna is not going to damage the fucking fingers. That's not even logically coherent. A 200% hollow purple that blew this nigga Sukuna's arm off can't destroy his fucking fingers? You bugging out your dick, nigga. In the last hour, we have discussed, broken down, and proved how Akutami has written a very flawed series. Naturally, if you derive happiness from the series, good for you, and I'm happy for you. Anything I say shouldn't be a bullet to the chest just because you co-sign something that is being insulted. No one is insulting you, and I'm sure you're a fine person outside your taste in manga. My biggest problem with JJK, personally, is the fan base and the audience, however. JJK's popularity completely reflects a chronically online society losing its touch and only relying upon robot instincts and submitting to their own psychosis. I know people that kept up with the manga weekly despite not actually reading it. I know people that read Gojo vs Sukuna before they read anything before that. This level of incorrectly engaging with the story is because the part of their brain wanting cool things first and not actually wanting to work for it speaks to them the loudest. People needing finality gratification do not want to start any anime that are infinitely better but much longer, like Naruto, Bleach, and Hunter x Hunter. JJK is much more digestible, and because it is a condensed formula of what works in Bleach and Hunter x Hunter, but executed with 90% less tact. The core appeal of JJK is cool, raw aura factor festering with characters to the point where every other story element gets ignored by the reader as long as you give me Sukuna glaze and Gojo aura. I can empirically verify this by an acquaintance of mine having JJK as their favorite anime ever, loving the story and finding so much enjoyment off reading it, and watching it, and listening to the music, and buying the manga, and plush, and data books, literally the whole 9 yards. However, if you ask this woman to give a quick synopsis of Hikari vs Kashimo, like lay out the story beats, like what happened, how did the fight go, she'll be dumbfounded. It is amazing how one person can swear up and down they're a fan of the series, but be completely dumbfounded when trying to recall the plot. I have also seen multiple people completely misinterpret, misread, and misunderstand the series in which they are supposedly fans of. Some fans genuinely think Hikari is a better character than Naoya. Hikari, whose character is feel the fever, and I'm a gambler. That's why Gege gambled on my screen time. Fan base of JJK quite literally do not read their own manga. It's kind of a joke when people say that, but it's a joke because it's true. When some fans are proven wrong, they praise the manga even though their reasoning is completely valid and solid. What does that tell you? To keep it short, nonsense works. Riz or skibbity, just nonsense brain rot that is completely synonymous with the series coined as lobotomy kaisen. In my opinion, this is a repugnant state of affairs. The fan base has no one but themselves to blame. From the power scaling guys who make a couple good arguments now they think they know more than a writer, shipping fangirls who decide they like the series before they even look at its writing, brain rot merchants who engage the story as a pastime, or the fake media literate goons who let Gege put the blindfold over them. This fanbase is something I detest more than the actual series, just a conglomerate of individuals using 5% of their brain.
I stay this money